Hey guys, Dr. Haywood here. Kind of losing my voice, hopefully I keep it. I'm in Etna, Wyoming, right on the western side of the state in Star Valley. This valley I live in a little town over here. I'm right off the highway that runs through, so it's a little noisy. But I'm going to take you to Blue Fox Pottery. It's a gallery. Tony Ivie, he's the owner. He lives here and he has a gallery here. He's an artist, and I thought I'd take you and we'd talk to him about the pottery he makes and the other art he does and how he travels around the world and how he became an artist and all that sort of stuff. So I hope you find this an interesting field trip. It's snowing, as it always does in Star Valley, for about 6 months out of the year, and so we'll take you inside and get you introduced to Tony, and we'll look at some of his cool stuff. I've bought some stuff from him. He's a pretty good artist. Alright guys, so I'm inside the gallery here with Tony, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about how he became an artist, and he's going to show us some of the cool pieces he does, and then he might even take us into his workshop and show us how he makes some of this stuff. So he does everything from throwing pots to sculpting to jewelry to pencil sketches and whatever else. So we'll talk to him. Hello, Tony. So maybe start out tell us, these are all kindergarten through 8th grade students. Maybe talk a little bit about how you got interested in art and became an artist.
Well, I was more born an artist. You're born into a certain realities. That's why it's good that kids this age are experiencing this, because they'll know at this point whether they have this curiosity and this need to just explore that, create things. I was born and raised on a dairy farm, and even though that was a big part of my life, and milking cows and things, I was always the kid who was drawing and creating and engineering things. So it wasn't like I can tell you a certain point where I just had something click. It's just always been my reality. Now that I do this full time, which I have been, this will be 26 years now. My gallery and my studio's open to the public. With each year, I hopefully get better, and my quality of, my work gets better, and my aesthetics gets better. But I was always one of these kids who, naturally being on a farm, you're not afraid of getting dirty, so clay seemed like a perfect medium, and so that's what I do most of the time. Most of the time I'm dirty with clay.
Did you go to school after high school for art or anything?
Yes, I actually, when I was in high school, I took the art classes, but they wouldn't let me take art when I was a senior because I made the teacher look stupid. I shouldn't say that, but that was the reality. So I wasn't taking art when I was a senior, but I did get a art scholarship to Utah State. That's where I started school, in Logan. So once you're once you're out of high school and you're in college where you can choose what you want to study and you're paying for, the classes, you're more serious about what you want to study. But that's where all of my options opened up for drawing and design, and that's actually where I started with clay. Accidentally took a ceramics class, and from then on it was like I had clay in my blood and addiction, and that's a good share of what I spend my time doing now.
Okay.
The sketches on the wall here are actually from black and white pencil sketches that I did when I was a senior in college. Losing my voice.
Yes, oh my. Must be the weird weather.
These were all done on site, meaning I did the sketch wherever I was at, and then I would also take notes on the sketchbook opposite page. And these all became large watercolors. At this point in college, I was studying many different mediums. I was studying fine art, which you're involved in, all sorts of design. I'd done oil painting, watercolor painting, even batik, and of course, I was always involved in making pottery, and so it was just these all, like I said, these all became large watercolors, and these watercolors sold a long time ago. I had these reproduced so that people could see what my background, as in fine art was. These are actually a very high quality print. The printer made a metal plate, and they used that plate to print on watercolor paper, so that's where those came from. So I basically don't do that much two-dimensional work. Most of my stuff is three-dimensional, like the pottery. The jewelry is more just it's kind of design exercises for me. I have a certain amount of demand for jewelry, so I do original jewelry, but these are all very typical things that you would see, people who do jewelry do.
Okay. You want to talk about these pottery pieces and anything there?
Well,
Maybe some interesting
most
pieces?
of the pieces on this side of the room are of a type of pottery called stoneware. So these pieces, these are meant to be used. This would be used for a cheese dish where you could put cheese under there and it would keep it from drying out. The smaller ones are more for butter. These here, these are soup bowls. They're meant to eat soup or stew from. This is like covered, these would be a canister set. The pieces on these shelves are that same type, mostly mugs on these shelves. These are, for instance, this design, these are individually designed. These are patterned after Wyoming Indian petroglyphs, or so it would be what the Indians had painted on the cliffs out through Wyoming. The other ones with the images, these are done from, I carve an imprint stamp in reverse in porcelain. The original stamp takes me about 17 hours to carve, and so you see, even though these appear one direction, the stamp was carved in reverse. And these are all done the same way. This particular one and this one you can see were painted using a brush and wax to get that design. These are all meant to be used, so these can be put in the microwave, the dishwasher. This particular design, a little more abstract, that is actually represents a raven, and it would be the style that they would do on totem poles, like the Indians from like Washington clear up into Alaska. Oh, there's one, I should bring one out. This is a newer one. Excuse me. This is my newest design. The Teton Mountains.
Oh yeah.
With the old barn. It's called the Molten Barn. It's up near Kelly, Wyoming. That particular design, the stamp for that took me 20 hours of carving to get that done. That's one of my most sought after pieces.
I like that.
So I'm most of the time I don't have any in stock. This is like a sushi platter that you would use for eating sushi. I use it for dinner plates. I have a set of these that I use for dinner plates.
Turtle on it.
The turtle is done the same way as these, the imprint. It's one of the oldest designs that I have still using.
Looks like a goblet.
Yeah. Now that is actually made in two different pieces when it's being constructed. The top part is thrown on the wheel. These are similar. The top part is thrown on the wheel, the bottom part is hand built, and then these are connected, put together. Oh, sorry about the dust. This is, because this is square, it has been, I use a paddle to paddle these square, the same as these bowls. You'll see the larger bowls done the same way. So everything on the made on the wheel is round, but I can change its shape after it's been thrown.
Tell them about these butter dishes.
These are called French butter dishes. You can see they have a compartment in the lid. These were designed 200 years ago, and that's why they're called French butter dishes. They're designed to where you can put butter in this compartment, and then it can be set out on the table. You can use it for making toast or pancakes or whatever. And then when you're not using it, you turn it upside down, put it back in its container. And this container has water in it, so when you put the lid on, the butter sits in cold water, so it keeps it from going rancid, and it also keeps it at a constant spreading temperature. These designs you see, these are all my own original designs. They're done with a brush and wax. You see I use the dragonfly quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see it in the bottom of this pouring bowl or in this big serving bowl. So those are done using a brush and liquid wax in order to make the design. This is a piece patterned, this is a raku fired piece. So this is fired in a different process outside. It's patterned after the King Tut mask from the Egyptian tomb of King Tut. So this piece, these pieces that have the copper and crackle pattern, these are different firing process. These are done outside.
If we talk about your sculpture, they'd like those.
The sculpture pieces, that's what I'm starting to work on right now. Those are individually sculpted out of the same clay as the pottery. That was one of my specialties. When I was in college, I studied sculpting, so it's just natural for me to do that now. These are, takes me about 3 months to do one of these, to complete it. They get fired in the kiln before they're painted, and then the final thing I do is I paint them with a special acrylic. That particular piece, the pig, is a style called steampunk. It's made to look like it's made from different scrap pieces, but that's all clay. The screws, everything, it's all made of clay. It's painted to look that way. You can tell from some of the things I sculpted, I came from a farm background because of the animals I use. That is a barn owl. What I'm sculpting in my kitchen right now, I'm sculpting 3 great horned owls. It'll be summer before they're completed.
Is this skateboard all clay too?
No, the skateboard, I actually bought a skateboard and I put a separate top on it in order to be able to hold this big fat cat. The cat is what has been sculpted. I've actually had people try to take the helmet off, not realizing that it's all one piece. Even the strap is made from clay, so it's hard. Now the pieces that are raku fired, these that are copper or have the crackle pattern, this is an example, very rare example. These pieces are fired in a kiln outside that I use gas to reach almost 2,000 degrees.
Okay.
When these pieces come out of the kiln, they're molten. The glaze is melted. And they're so hot that I have to pick them up with a long set of metal tongs. They're immediately put in a barrel. It's actually a metal garbage can that has very fine sawdust. When they come in contact with the sawdust, they immediately start burning. And then I put a lid on the container so that smoke is trapped in there, and they're allowed to cool rather slowly. And so they go through a chemical change. You see these areas that are copper, those areas change from green to copper in the burning in the sawdust. And the areas that you will see on some of these where there's a crackle pattern, like on this piece, that is actually, that's not a very good example. Here's one that's got more crackle pattern. The crackle that you see is just carbon that's trapped in the glaze. The pot itself is not broken. This is just part of the effect of the firing. And these are all designed to where if you turn the piece a third, like you can see on this one, it completely changes. And it's like 3 separate pieces.
Yeah.
It's a challenge to, when I paint these, like for instance, the goat there that has a beard, or it's painted to look like it has hair on it rather than just paint.
Yeah.
That's because of all of my years' experience as a painter. That is one of the few owls I have left. That is a great gray owl.
Yeah, last time I was here, you had quite a few. Seemed like.
Just the last few months since the eclipse, when there were so many people in the valley,
Oh yeah.
I sold a lot of stuff. Yeah. So that's why now that it's slowing down, I am trying to focus on sculpting, which is really difficult thing to do in summertime because I have people constantly coming in, and in order to sculpt, I have to focus on it hour after hour after hour.
So you talked about possibly showing us some.
I can, if
work?
you want, I'll change my shoes and work up some clay. Come
Okay.
on in,
Okay.
I actually go out and I select rocks from the lake bed. They're called river rocks, and I find them according to shape and size. And then see, there's a rock underneath here. I've covered them with plastic, and there's a rock underneath here. So I will start sculpting over the rock, and I'll eventually sculpt, the shape and the texture of the great horned owl. This one just got started. It's just really roughed in right now. And I'll continually add the textures in the beak and the eyes and whatever.
But the rock stays in there.
The rock will be there until I'm finished sculpting. And once I'm finished and the clay starts to just set up, it doesn't dry, it's just set up, I will turn it from the back and I'll remove the rock. I have to cut the plastic and remove the rock so that way it's hollow on the inside. And I will add, I have to make eyes that will be put in there. The eyes will be hollow, and I will have to carve from the back so that I open up those hollow parts, otherwise it would explode. And then it goes through a long drying process, and then it gets fired in the kiln, and then I will bring it back out here on the table, and then I'll paint it using special They're special acrylic paints I use on these.
Use your tools.
Yeah, that's some of my tools. That's a few. Sorry about all the food and everything because I live here. This is just always chaos.
This
here.
is good to know.
Let me change my shoes here.
Okay.